Served is nearly ready for prime time, and I'm about to send out another round of invites for the private beta, so I figured now would be a good time to do a run through video of how to get a project set up and live on the platform so you can see what you're letting yourselves in for. I'm going to start with a fork of the CraftCMS demo project, the Happy Lager website. I've literally just forked that into my personal account on GitHub just now. I can first of all clone that down to my local environment. Like so. And then we can just have a look at the code just to show that it's a standard craft project. There's nothing crazy going on inside there. So here we can see that it's just got the standard craft folder structure. Serve doesn't require you to have the craft folder structure in the root of the project. You can have it 3 folders down if you wanted to. It will still figure things out. But as a sample case, this is nice and straightforward. Because we have forks the repo in GitHub, and we have a first-party integration with GitHub, which means that within the served platform, we can simply pull that repo directly in. I'm pre-authenticated because I've already authenticated with GitHub on my served account, so I can simply select GitHub, click Next, and it will give me a list of my repos. The repo that I've just created is this one here. They are ordered by the most recent commits, which is why Unreal Engine is at the top of the list, because that gets lots of commits every day. Once you've selected the repo that you want to work with, you can select a branch, which those are the 2 that are included in the repo, and you can select a commit from that branch. Currently the latest commit is a composer update, so we'll select that and we'll click Next. The next thing Serve will do is look through the folder structure of the repo, and it will try to figure out which of the folders inside the repo belong to the craft, itself, as opposed to just random other things that you might have shoved in there. And then it will give you back these directory structure suggestions. So Served thinks that the craft web directory is at the path/web inside the repo, which is correct. As we can see inside the repo over here, we have a web folder. And the same with config, templates, modules, composer.json, composer.lock. Optionally, you can include a translations folder because Craft does allow you to use the translations folder. And there's also the option to use a plugins folder, which you can use to include plugins that you have created for your project that you haven't pushed to a package repository. So you can't plugins that you don't want to publish for other people to use. Essentially, you can wrap up inside a plugins folder and then reference them from your composer file so that you can still pull them into your project. So all this looks good. Let's click Next. Now already the project has started building in the background, so things are already happening. It's Served is making bundling up our project into a set of deployable pieces. But while that's going on, we can set some extra little bits and pieces, such as environment variables. I can't remember if Happy Lager actually uses the table prefix craft underscore, but we'll leave it there anyway, because if it's wrong, then we can just change it in the control panel later. So we'll click Next, and that's it. We just have to wait now. The project is being built and is being deployed to the Served platform. There's a bit of text here that tells us that we probably should install the Served Assets and Helpers plugin. The reason that we need this is because all of the local file systems for projects within the Served platform have an ephemeral file system, which means that the file system, every time you update your project, the file system gets reset to a pristine state. So you do have a file system that you can make use of. However, you can't guarantee that the changes you make to that file system are going to persist over a long period of time. That gives us an interesting problem for uploading files through the Craft control panel, because we want to allow users to upload images and things through the Craft control panel, but we don't want those files to then suddenly get deleted when we push an update, which would reset the local file system. So Served has an assets and helpers plugin which you can install into your project, which gives you a really simple integration with third-party object storage for all of your images, which doesn't suffer from the same issue. So in our terminal, we can use Composer to require that. I've got the tab open which has the actual information about the plugin here, which means we can copy the package name, and then we can require it here. And that will just include it in our Happy Lager project. And hopefully it doesn't error out while it's doing it. Looks like our project is still building over here. It usually takes 2 to 3 minutes for this to complete and get deployed to the platform. So our plugin has been installed into our repo. We should now be able to see that in compose.lock for our project. And there it is. It's installed version 1.2.1, which is the latest version, so that's good. Oh, and also the project has just finished deploying to the platform as well. So let's see what's happening with this project on the platform at the moment. It says that a staging environment's been created. The staging environment is protected by a username and password, which is good. We don't want people to be prying on our staging environment. And it's given us a link pointing directly to it. So let's copy this password and log into that project. And this is the standard Craft error message for when Craft hasn't been installed yet. And if we go to /admin, we should be able to see that indeed Craft isn't yet installed, which is what we'd expect because we haven't uploaded a database or run through the install process yet. At this point, we can actually run the install script if we want to, or we can upload a database dump, which is suggested by this text here. Alternatively, you can upload a database dump. Let's do that because then we get a head start. I believe there is one that is checked into the repo itself. There it is. So let's upload that database dump and see what we end up with. It's only 2 megabytes in size, so it shouldn't take long to process. We can actually see that it has completed. So now if we go back to our project, we will hopefully... Oh, so earlier I said that we don't know if the database prefix craft underscore is being used with the Happy Lager project. The fact that Craft still thinks that our project isn't installed after we've just uploaded the database dump would suggest to me that the database dump didn't include the craft underscore prefix. That's easy for us to change. In our staging environment settings, we have a list of environment variables which are set for this project. We can just clear that out, give that a save. Now, whenever settings are changed within Served, they aren't applied to your project immediately. The reason for this is that you can then make multiple different changes all in one batch, and then you can deploy them all in a single operation, because you might change one thing which breaks your site but then change another thing which fixes it again. So rather than deploying one, breaking the site, and then another, fixing it again, you can make both of those changes and then deploy them both at the same time. And we do that by syncing the project. So we can click this button, which will sync that change to the environment variables. This should only take about 5 seconds, which is good. And now hopefully when we return to our site, we have Happy Lager, which unstyled currently, so we'll debug that in a moment. But you can see that all the content is there and as expected. So the next step is to get these styles working. First thing we'll do is check to see where it is looking for those styles, which probably we can see the errors in the console. So we've got 404 on some CSS. It is looking for an environment variable called site URL, which currently we haven't set because we haven't added it to our environment variables, but we can do that now. So that will be our site URL. Let's add it here. Sync. And then we'll try again. And that looks better. We've now got all of our styles loading in. We've got some broken images, but that's to be expected. As we discussed, we need the served image plugin, asset plugin, setting up to make those work. But other than that, the site looks like it's all there. It's got all the content needs, all the styles are loading in, all of the hard-coded images, all of the static images are all pulling in fine. Let's just check the search. Test didn't find anything. Let's do a search for beer. Oh, that's sad. But let's get the images working. So we previously used Composer to require the served assets plugin on our local repo. So if we check what's changed there, we can see that composer.json and composer.block have both been updated, which is as expected. If we add both of those, and push those up to the repo, now they're in the Git repo on GitHub, we can use those changes to create a new bundle, which is deployable to our served environments. And to do that, we simply click on the Create a New Bundle button, select a commit from the repo, and you can see that my new commit is at the top of the list of most recent commits. At this point, we can change our base software if we need to. So if you wanted to do an update to PHP 7.4, then you would select that there. And we also have updates for the version of Nginx that's being used to power the project. You can make changes to these base versions as and when it suits you. So if you never want to update from PHP 7.3, that's fine. You can just keep it there and build all of your subsequent bundles using the same base software. I will be releasing updates for the base software as often as is required. So for like security patches, updates will get pushed out for these, and then you can apply them to your bundles as you see fit. So updates like this are never forced on you. You will be notified that they are available, and then you will be able to create new bundles with that updated software, deploy those to your staging environment, test them, and only at that point, when you are confident that nothing is broken, will you then deploy them to your production environment. For now, we're just going to keep exactly as we had in our previous bundle, which we know is working. Just in case we've changed any of the paths inside our repo, we just have to confirm the directory map again. Nothing's changed in the paths in the repo, so we can confirm that and build a new bundle. That will go off and perform that action in the background. If you want to, you can watch it processing here. This will probably take a minute or so. And once it's been built, we can set this new bundle as the selected bundle for our staging environment. And then, as we've done previously, we can sync that change up to the platform itself. So we can actually kind of push that change live. Again, this comes back to the making changes and then syncing them all in one go, because if we were to create a new bundle which required new environment variables, for instance, you could select the new bundle, add the environment variables, save all that, maybe tweak some of the settings as well, and then sync all those changes in one atomic operation, which means that you don't have to worry about downtime, because you have to update files and then go and update configuration separately, which is really nice. Hopefully this won't take much longer. There we go. So now I can select my new bundle, save it as the selected bundle for the staging environment, and we can sync that change. This will take a little bit longer because it has to pull a new bundle into the cluster, but still shouldn't take very long. While this sync is in progress, it's good to note that the website is still live. So all of the changes that are being applied, downloading all the new files for the website or for the new bundle, are all done next to, like, by the side of your existing live site. And then once it's all finished, one gets swapped out for the other. So you get nice zero downtime atomic deployments. So now we are running on our updated bundle. So there's no changes here because all we've done is added a plugin. If we go to our admin panel, however, we should be able to see that in the plugins, we now have the served assets and helpers, which we can install. And what that allows us to do is create asset volumes which are remotely hosted. Oh, one thing to note, actually, in the instructions for the plugin, it says that we have to set the base URL to this path, which is served CDN platform. All of your assets go through a CDN where they are cached at the edge. So that takes some stress off your website itself, and also allows the download rates for your end users to increase because they're pulling from a CDN server, which is usually closer to them than the origin server. We can set the volume type to served asset storage. When you're running this plugin within served itself, you actually don't need to fill in the project slug and the secret access key. They are injected for you. If you're running the plugin locally, you will have to supply those because the plugin can't figure them out when it's running locally, but it can when it's inside served. So we actually don't need to fill those in right now. And because this Happy Lager site has multiple different asset volumes, we're going to have to set a subfolder. We can set that to something that matches the volume's name. So let's just call it site. Save that. And then we'll do the same for the other volumes. This one's called logos. All looks okay. Then we've got icons. And finally, user photos. Apparently these don't have public URLs. Okay. So now that they've all been set up, if we actually go and visit the website, that will all break because we've altered existing asset volumes, which have all of their files on the local file system. We've changed those to point to the served asset storage system, but the files that are on our file system don't currently exist within served's asset platform. So they will not show up. It'll just throw lots of errors because they don't exist. So let's have a look at that. As you can see, the images just aren't pulling through because they don't yet exist on served's asset platform. So what can we do about that? Well, Served gives you the option to bulk upload images to the asset platform via SFTP. So you can, if you're in this situation where you have lots of images, maybe you've used them on an old website and you need to move them over to Served's asset platform, then you can do so via SFTP. All you need to do is supply an SSH public key and then connect to that SFTP account using the private portion of that key, and all of the additional details that you need to connect to that platform are provided for you here. So I'm just going to go and generate a public and private key pair that I can use for this. So I've generated an SSH key pair, which I can use for the served assets platform. I can take the public portion of that key and add it here, which generates me a username to accompany that key pair. The reason that usernames are generated for each key is so that you can revoke access on a key basis at a later date. So if another developer who's had access to the project in the past needs their access revoking, you can just delete their SFTP user through this interface. I've also set up the credentials for connecting to the served assets platform inside FileZilla. So I should now be able to connect like so. So currently there's nothing in there. One thing that's left to do on this is I actually need to automatically create some folders for the different environments within the served system within this base directory, because the assets platform stores the assets for your local development, staging environment, and production environment, all in the same kind of location, but they each have their own subfolder. So you can have all of your assets in one place, but you can still have separate assets for your different environments. So this little bit will be done automatically in the future, but I'm just going to create some folders for staging and production. We're currently using our staging environment, so I'll drop in there. And then this is where these subpaths come in. So we set a subpath for a site for one of these. And then we also had logos. We had icons. And user photos. So these are the directories that the subfolder is referring to. So now we can move the files which are in the repo. So I'll just find those. So here's the repo itself. If we have a look inside, web, assets, I can't remember what the paths were for these now. Let's see if we can hunt them down. Oh, well, there's logos. So let's get those uploaded. There we go. And then obviously we've got site. Let's load those. We have company logos and user photos. So oh, hang on, we have a service icons here. So okay, icons, I imagine is these. Hopefully I've got all this right after I've uploaded everything. And user photos. There was a subfolder inside site staff. Could be those. Let's give it a go. Okay, so now we've uploaded all of our images to folders that I think are correct in our assets platform. I'm hoping. There we go. So now we've got our hero image. We've got these images being automatically generated. And we've got these guys. And I imagine everything else is, yeah, it looks like I got everything in the right place. So that was lucky. So the assets aren't actually pulling directly from this storage because we've uploaded the original files that were included in the repo, which will be the full size images. But these images are actually undergoing transforms, which Craft handles on our behalf. Normally, when you are hosting images on a third-party image storage, Craft will download the images. It will perform the image transforms on the server itself, and then it will keep a cached version, and it will serve the cached version of the transformed image at that point. Serve does this a little bit differently, and it intercepts Craft's attempt to download the image and perform the transform, and instead changes the URL that's returned to the user to push the image transform to an image resize and optimization service, which is specific to served. So, for instance, if we have a look on the homepage and we have a look at this image, you can see that the URL is set to optimize.assets.serve.host and then a load of characters. So it is this URL that is forcing the image to be pulled via served's off-server image optimization and transformation service. But you can still manage the actual image transforms through the Craft control panel. So if I were to change any of the settings inside these image transforms, they would be immediately applied to any images that are being pulled via the image transform service, which is included with the served asset platform, which is really cool. You will notice that I had to do very little to actually get this set up. I had to do more because I'm taking a project which wasn't built for the served platform, and I kind of converted it to the served way of doing things. If I were to take a brand new site and build it specifically for served from the very beginning, there would be almost no config that I would need to do. I wouldn't have to do all of the moving around of existing assets and creating folders inside the SFTP account to get those in the right place. You would be able to manage all of that via just the Craft control panel. So we now have our fully functioning site up and running with images on there, asset transforms all working. The next thing you probably want to do at this point is create some bits and pieces of content, and then you will want to go live with your website. So let's just run through that process. First thing we need to do to get the website live is to actually select a plan for the project. We're just going to select the basic plan for this one. My team, you'll notice that I am currently using Matt's team. I have a load of credit. I was kind enough to give myself many pounds worth of credit so that I can host projects for free in my own in my own hosting platform, which means that I currently have to pay 0 because it's just going to use the credit from my account. I should probably make that clear on this page that it's using a specific amount of credit instead. But let's confirm that. We have now selected a plan, and you will notice that the sync in progress is running. What that's actually doing is creating our production environment. You'll also notice that production has now shown up in our list of environments in the navigation to the left. If we select that environment, we can see that no bundle is currently selected for deployment in this environment. And also the environment variables have reset to their defaults. So everything that we set up for staging is still intact, and our environment variable is still there. But in our production environment, we've just got a clean slate, as it were. So at this point, we can either go through the process again of adding environment variables. They might be slightly different to staging, for instance. And in fact, let's do that so that we can run through and actually show how it's working. So we need a site URL for production, which was set. Let's just open that in a new tab, and then we can grab this. The main difference here is that we will need to change stage to prod because the production environment has a slightly different URL, has prod instead of stage. Select the same commit, and let's get that synced up, and we should then, once the bundle has been deployed, we'll be able to see our production environment, which of course won't be password protected because we want people to actually be able to see our production environment. So that's done. Let's give that a refresh. And now we've got a URL to our production environment. Give that a click. And service is unavailable. This is because we haven't set up the database for our production environment yet. So we could go through the same process as we did previously and mess around with uploading database dumps and things, or we can use another tool in the served tool belt, and that's environment cloning. So I just want to double check that in production. So I need to get rid of the database table prefix as well. Site underscore URL. Get rid of that. Just make sure that's stuck. It has. And let's give that a sync just to make sure that's all going to get pushed up nice. And once that's done, we can then import all of the settings from our staging, or all of our content from our staging environment into our production environment, which means we just get an exact copy of our staging environment pushed into our production environment. To do that, we can select import under production because we are importing into production. We can clone from an environment. Currently, the only other environment that we have is staging. We want to copy over the database. We'll copy over all of those assets that we were messing around with. We'll just copy all those in one go. And also you can import and deploy the selected bundle. So if your deployed bundles between staging and production are currently different, you can import one into the other to make sure that you've got an exact replica of one environment in the other environment. So let's run that. And this might take a minute because when it's cloning the environment, it did have to copy all of the image files into the right places, which, to be honest, it only took about 5 seconds anyway. Okay, and we're all done. So now if we go back to our production site, we now see that it is an exact replica. Oh, the styling for this is slightly off, and that is because... Is that because? Let's just have a look for errors there. I've set a stage URL somewhere. Here. So let's just save that. Okay, now the site URL is actually pointing to production. So it'll pull the assets from the correct place. We'll sync that. And once it's done, the production environment will have all the data and all the content from the staging environment, which we can see it does. You can also see that change in the SFTP account. So if we go up a couple of folders and then go into our production folder, you'll remember that I created that earlier just as an empty folder and didn't put anything inside it. Now all of the assets have been copied over. So the production folder in the assets platform is now an exact copy of the staging folder. And the last thing that we need to do, so that our website's up, it's essentially live on this URL, the content's all in there, it's all working. We just need to link a domain name to this project to start receiving traffic. And that's all just done through a GUI in the served dashboard. So if we have a look at the domains page, we can currently see that no domains have been added for the project. We can add a temporary one. I'll use demo2.mattgraysok.com. Get that added, and then we need to create an A record. I'm going to add lots of instructions to this page for different DNS providers, but essentially we need to add an A record, DNS A record, for this subdomain to point to the IP address for the project, which is displayed there. So I'm just going to go and do that, and I'll be back in a sec once it's done. So I've added the DNS record for this subdomain to point to the IP address for the project. And if I click verify, the platform will check in the background to make sure that the DNS records have been set up correctly. And once it has been confirmed that the subdomain is actually pointing towards towards the served platform, it will generate SSL certificates and things like that. So let's click verify. The domain name has been verified, so now it's able to generate SSL certs for the project as well. Let's get that synced, which essentially pushes the configuration that points this domain name to our particular project within the platform. And once that's done, it should take around 20 to 30 seconds to get the SSL certificates for this domain sorted out. So let's try visiting that in a new tab. Currently we've got a security error because the SSL certificate hasn't generated yet. We'll just give that a few seconds. And there we have it. So now our new subdomain is working. We can see that it has an SSL certificate, which has been set up for it, which Chrome likes. So that's good. The styles have broken again, and you can probably guess why that is. It's because we're now using a different domain name. So if we copy this, go back into our production settings, our site URL has now changed because we want to use the production URL. Save that. Resync. And once that change is pushed to the platform, we can give it another refresh. There we go. And our styles are all fixed again. So we've gone from a craft project which has been built locally, the Happy Lager website. We have integrated the craft assets plugin to make sure that assets are being stored off the local file system. They're being served through a CDN, and they're also being optimized and transformed off the server. We have gone through selecting a plan and getting a production environment set up. We have shown how assets can be cloned, assets and configuration and the database, and the bundle that's currently deployed in an environment can all be cloned from one environment to another so that you end up with an exact copy of your project in your, in this case, production environment. After copying everything from staging, we've shown that you can interact with the assets platform via SFTP, so you can do bulk uploads and downloads of assets. And we've also linked up a domain name and generated an SSL certificate for our site, all with relatively little DevOps and technical knowledge required. So hopefully you've enjoyed this run through of Served, and I look forward to you guys trying it out very shortly.